This video contains discussions and/or visual representations of sexual imagery for educational purposes. We understand that such content may be sensitive for some viewers. Please proceed with caution and ensure that you are in a comfortable and appropriate environment. If you find such content distressing, we recommend refraining from watching this testimony.
It was the night of Ronda Rousey's very first fight. My stepmom, me, and my sister were going to a party out in Tulare area. And on the way home, I had texted, our youth pastor, hey, don't get me. I'm not going to be in town. I had already made up in my mind, God doesn't want me. And on that way home, my stepmom wrecked the car. She totaled it. And when I came to, there was smoke everywhere. And instead of my stepmom pulling us out, trying to get us, she was searching for a piece of gum to get the smell of alcohol off of her breath. So as I climbed over my sister that's incapacitated, bleeding in the front seat, I believe I got to see a glimpse of God that night for the very first time, a glimpse of hope. And in that moment, I believe God gave me the strength to not only pull open a door that was pinned closed, but myself with only 98 pounds to lift another person dead weight from a smoking car and lay her inside the street. I looked at the vehicle and I seen a man dressed in all white, no face. I could tell he was a dark-toned man. And I looked back at my sister and I looked back at the car and he was. And at that moment, I just thanked God because that was the first time I ever thought God was with me in my life.
What's your name?
My name is Elena Bracamontes, Gonzalez. I'm 25. I'm married and I have 2 kids. And I'm just here to share my life, my testimony, and what God has brought me from, what he has delivered me from, and what I surrendered to him. And just to let everybody know they're not alone. And wherever you are now, God will meet you right where you are, as he met me. And we'll get there. Mm-hmm. I came from a broken home. My parents divorced before I was even walking. But they were married quickly, so I was always in a 2-parent household. My parents were working parents. We never went without food. We never went without clothing. We were well equipped, for the physical aspects though, materialistic things we had. But, at the earliest age of 5, I began to be abused sexually by a family member on my dad's side. And, without me knowing, I was already being attacked by the devil. And people were planting seeds into my life of sexual perversion, and false love and false teaching. And it took a lot out of a child that was confused. Now knowing that confusion is not of God, it is of the devil, it changes my mind, my mindset of where I was at that time. And the abuse went on for years. It went on from the age of 5, I think, to about the 5th grade, so maybe 10, 11 years old. And my sister spoke up and, it came to light. But at the same time, from going from one abuse, I was introduced to another abuse from my stepmother's side of the family, an older male cousin, and from being by my uncle and, being brought into light, I thought, maybe I'd be more protected. And no, it made me more, how would I say, vulnerable to those that were dealing with sexual perversions and inappropriate thoughts. And, so for me, it was just a form of life at that time, not knowing anything about God. My parents were not religious. I had never touched a Bible until I was 15 or 16 years old. So walking through all of this without God was like walking through hell. And it was hard. So by the age of 10 or 11, my virtue was taken by that man, by that cousin, he raped me, and There was family around, there was a full house, but I was just unseen, unknown. And so I went on with life without saying anything because, how could they not have known? And at that time, I didn't know anything about God, so I didn't even know if I could cry out to somebody. And eventually, I was just acting out, and to everybody else, I was just an angry, misbehaving child. It was hateful, it was ugly, and I was acting out sexually with not knowing why. They just thought it was just me. For all I knew, I was okay. That was life, and that was love. As time went on and, I started going through the court process about my uncle and the abuse that came out, I was sent up to the LA County area with my mother. And, here I thought I'd be safe and I'd be okay. But every place I was taken, there was just another predator waiting for me. And at this time, confusion started to set in a lot. And I think I was barely 12, and the court stuff had finally stopped. I just wanted to be free. I didn't know my mom really. We had never had a relationship. So when I went, everybody there on her side or who she became family with, they knew of my abuse. And again, they used it as a weapon, as their own, toy, I guess. But, I was introduced to a man. He's a grandfather-in-law. And at that time, he began to groom me and show me different forms of love as if, I had never felt before. He conversated with me. He told me about hopes and dreams and told me how I would succeed in life. Things I had never heard before. Told me how the world would be possible, but I'd have to rely on him. That everything I needed would be through him. It was hard, you know, establishing what real love is because I never really got it. I never knew. So, he began to touch me, groom me, pet me, different things, before it escalated into a bigger situation. And at that time, I seen my own mother and my own stepfather watching the abuse happen. So, I thought it was okay. I didn't know anything different. I just allowed it. At that age, I just didn't know. And eventually, things got out of hand, and I was doing good in school. I was a straight A student. I was in sports, and the abuse with him started to progress until one day he hit me violently in his car, and he took my clothes and changed me and set me on my way back. For me, I was unseen. I was missing for hours at the age of 12, and nobody was looking for me. And so I was mad. I was angry, and I caused a fight between me and my mom and my brother because I just wanted her to be a mother. And that she sat in front of a video game so long that she was just missing my life. And I was unseen. My mom struggled with addiction, and she struggled with sexual abuse and sexual perversion on her own. And I didn't know at the time, but the fight got so escalated, where me and her fought, and she beat me. And I could read the police reports and know that I was bruised from head to toe. And I had blood in my nose, and I had missing hair from my head. And I sat before officers asking, where would you like to go? And the only place that they were willing to send me was to the grandfather's house that was abusing me. So I chose to be put into the foster system, into a home I didn't know, because I thought I'd be safe. Well, it wasn't. The first night I got into my first foster house, I was the only person that spoke English. I had nobody there. I had no phone privileges. I was in somewhere in Ventura County, and when I got there, I was jumped, and I didn't even have clothes to wear. I was wearing random underwear that they gave me, and I was there for months, unseen, unheard, not knowing God. I felt like I was ready to die. I struggled with thoughts from that age on. You know, eventually I earned phone privileges, and I called my biological father and I told him where I was. And, in due time, he got me. I was welcomed back into his home. But what cost, because the abuse was still there. The cousin from my mother, my stepmother's side, was there, and when I was welcomed into their home, the first sentence I heard was, "Don't cause any trouble. You're lucky to be home." And that same night I was welcomed back, that same cousin came and pushed me into the bathroom. And he forced me from my neck into the toilet and me. And I never said anything, ever, because I didn't want to cause any trouble. I just tried to be unseen because that was best. And from that point, I struggled with drugs. I was taking whatever medication I can find and Googled and found as a narcotic in my parents' home. I was drinking alcohol behind closed doors just to numb what I was feeling. I eventually got dressed in a very nice, pretty dress, and I laid down in bed. And I took an entire bottle of sleeping medication, and I tried to kill myself. And I think I was only going to be a freshman by that time. And it was hard. I was a good kid, I was smart, I was athletic, but I was angry, and I felt so unseen and unheard. So I went on trying just to do my best in school because maybe I'd get out. That'd be my way out. So around my freshman and sophomore year, I really felt like I needed to reach out to one of my sisters. So I walked and walked, and I met her at her house because we had different dads at the time. Well, always. And her dad was serving God. He was a conservative Pentecostal apostolic man. And he was a good man. I don't remember a lot about him when he was married to my mom. But I knew he was a good man because he never did anything to me. And he showed me the Lord. He took me to church, and I began to see God. I began to realize that the life I was living is not ordained by God. The things that were brought into my life aren't right, and I still struggled with drug abuse and alcoholism and wanting to be a kid, I wanted to be free. And that at that age, I had a best friend. I met her when I was like in third grade, so we've been through it. I still see her today. While I was serving God, it was the night of Ronda Rousey's very first fight. My stepmom, me, and my sister were going to a party out in Tulare area. And on the way home, I had texted like our youth pastor or our youth man or whoever was picking me up for church. Hey, don't get me. Like, I'm not going to be in town. I had already made up in my mind, like, God doesn't want me. And on that way home, my stepmom wrecked the car. She totaled it. And when I came to, there was smoke everywhere. And instead of my stepmom pulling us out, trying to get us, she was searching for a piece of gum to get the smell of alcohol off of her breath. So as I climbed over my sister that's incapacitated, bleeding in the front seat, I believe I got to see a glimpse of God that night for the very first time. A glimpse of hope. And in that moment, I believe God gave me the strength to not only pull open a door that was pinned closed, but myself with only 98 pounds to lift another person dead weight from a smoking car and lay her inside the street. I looked at the vehicle and I seen a man dressed in all white, no face. I could tell he was a dark-toned man. And I looked back at my sister and I looked back at the car and he was gone. And at that moment, I just thanked God, because that was the first time I ever thought God was with me in my life. And the next day, after spending all night in the hospital, all night with the police, I made the early morning call for them to come and get me. And that night I went in to the church, just thankful that we were alive. And I began to plead out to the Lord. And that day I was baptized with the Holy Ghost. And I was actually baptized in the name of Jesus in the water. I could barely crawl into the tub. I was so sore from the car wreck. And so life went on. Over time, I thought I was doing good in the Lord. I was, all the abuse had stopped, but it was still in the dark. It was never brought out to the light. And eventually, my dad was going through a divorce, and it was getting really, really bad. And I just made the decision to pack all my things. And I was only, 15 or 16? I kissed my sister on the top of her head and I said, I love you, but I have to leave. And I left my father's home and I moved in with very very loving Christian family. They gave me love that I had never had before. I got to see what a true family was. Their hard times, their good times, the times they were blessed, the times that they didn't have anything, but they still relied on God. And in that time, I got really sick. I was struggling. So I was really missing my mom. I don't know why. She was never even there for me. That's okay. She was escaping her own life. So I went to go and visit her. And it was around the holidays, And there he was, that grandpa again. And he just took advantage of me over and over. And eventually, I thought it was just love. And I accepted it willingly. And his sin became mine. It took root at that time. It was no longer just a seed. And I came home and I was still living in their home. But I felt so dirty. He was messaging me. He was calling me. He wouldn't leave me alone. He was making me become a liar, and I was willing to lie because I felt so much shame and guilt. At that time, I didn't know what it was, but I just knew it was wrong. And I thought, how could I live in their house and be in sin? How could I be this person? And the more I just asked God to forgive me, I just couldn't forgive myself. I was still preaching the gospel to my really close friend, but living in sin behind a closed door, and it was killing me. So I knew I was gonna leave, and I didn't know when. But I knew my friend wouldn't make it if she didn't know God. So I prayed, God, lead her to the Lord, even if I'm not right standing. And today she is a faithful Christian. She has 3 beautiful little girls, and she's married to her high school sweetheart. And that's a testimony I had and an answered prayer. But as I pushed her to the Lord, I backslid. At this time, I was still 16. My year was hard, and I went with my aunt that lived with some of my grandparents, and I began to have flashbacks of her, forcing me to watch her have sex with men, She performed with witchcraft on me with a Ouija board while she has on the TV. And so I just was complicit. I just chose to leave. And so I was just trying to finish school and just graduate at least. And in the midst of all of this, I was still being talked to by my grandfather, And at that time, I thought it was love because of the way he did it, the way he manipulated me and used me. I thought, well, it's better than just always having a bad day. There's good days. And so I went up to my mom's, I started working, and before I could even try to get my feet on the ground as an adult, he'd be waiting for me at every job, everywhere I got out. I just seemed like I couldn't escape him. And so I just became willing. And I thought, if this is how life's going to be, might as well get the best out of it. And so I did. But in the midst of that, I drank and drank and drank until I was numb. So I'd black out. I would do coke just to stay awake. I'd smoke weed to dull my mind. It just continued, and it went on and on and on for years until I finally stopped, I'm 18 now. I can leave. And so I booked the bus ticket and I left to South Dakota. And I stayed with this guy I met in high school. Didn't really know each other, just knew life sucked. I did immoral things with him, sexual perversions, sexual acts. And my grandfather went up there and he brought me home. He told me I didn't belong to anybody else. And, when I came back and stuff, he told me he had plans and stuff for me. And at this time, nobody in my family knew where I was. And he took me up to South Dakota. Not South Dakota, San Diego area. Where he told me I was going. I ended up in a little town called Crystal Cove. He isolated me. He took my cell phone. He went through it. And, I had downloaded this dating app called Tinder. Many people know what it is. Many people know what's on there. Nothing godly. I was having ungodly conversations. And that made him mad. And at that point, he decided, if this is what you want, let's have it. So he invited men over and let them do whatever they wanted to me as he held me down, as he pinned me by my neck. I was gone for over 2 weeks. By the time I got home, I was bruised from my ankles to my waist, bruises and bite marks. And I just went on about life. And at that time, I was trying to work. I was trying to do everything, and I just couldn't. I couldn't make it. I was struggling with drugs, struggling with everything. And in the midst of that, I just asked God just to lead me to the right person, to show me what true love is. And when I finally left my mom's and I disappeared, I came back to my hometown here, and eventually in due time, I met my husband, But the person he thought was standing in front of him wasn't even close to the person that I am today. And I'm thankful for the man that I married, because I can't say that somebody else would have stood with me after finding it all out and to still love me the same. And so this went on for years. I've been married almost 5 years now. You know, the abuse stopped around 18. And my marriage went through a very, very rough stage because I was triggered in a lot of different things without my husband knowing. There was a point in my marriage I thought I was going to leave him. I was making arrangements to pack up and to disappear. I even brought another woman into our marriage because I thought maybe if I make him comfortable, he wouldn't be angry that I left like Jerry. But it wasn't right because I love my husband. And I thank God it didn't happen. So eventually my husband started, years later, he started bringing us to church and stuff. And, you know, I didn't think this was where we were going to be. You know, I believe God was speaking to me before we got to church. He began to convict me in the car about music I was singing. And slowly, you know, we began to look for churches and stuff. But then I met somebody at the, and definitely believe she was God sent. Because there was a familiar love, but I didn't even know her. I had never felt that love before. And she was the first person I disclosed my life to in depth. She didn't judge me. She showed me the Lord. And so I didn't know I was dealing with spirits. I didn't know what was in me. I didn't know that I needed to be delivered. I was willing to just give it all to God. And so one day, you know, everything had came to light within my marriage and with my parents. She invited me to a private encountering with the Lord with like-minded women. At the time, I didn't know what any of that meant. I was just like, okay, let's do it. And so I went, and before I even got there, I had been telling her, I don't know, I could just hear women travailing. And we pulled up to this house, and the first thing I could hear was a woman travailing. And I went in, not knowing, but expecting God. And when I began to go in there, I told God, I don't know why I'm here, but show me. Show me why I'm here. Show me what I need to be delivered from. I want to be free. So I lift my head, and all the women in the room begin to speak of their assaults. It can be sexual, it can be mental, physical, starvation. And I said, God, okay. At the time, I laughed because I was like, I just got set up. But I know it was the will of God. So when I went, and it finally came down to me in a room full of women I don't even know, they told me, I'm here because I need to be delivered. And I'm willing to be delivered. So he asked me to pull up a chair, and I began to pray. And I was weeping, but I was angry. I was so angry, and I don't even know why. But now realizing it was the spirits manifesting in front of me. And I was being tormented. And they asked me to lay on the floor. So I laid down. In that instance, I felt like I was bound to the floor by my feet and by my ankles, as if I was being held down forcefully. With all my might, I couldn't even lift my head. And the women began to pray over me. And at that moment, at the exact same time, God is showing me all of my abuse. Every person that has ever assaulted me or hurt me, showing me what they have in their hands and what they left on me. And then he began to show me my mother crying out to the Lord, being tormented by the same sexual perversions. And then I see my grandmother crying out to God because she was being tormented by the same sexual perversions. Not knowing what a generational curse was at that time, just knowing it needed to stop with me. And at that moment, I felt hundreds of hands on me, forcefully holding me down, almost if I was being ripped open from my stomach through my back. There was only maybe 12 women in there. And at that time, I remember just begging God to set me free, to deliver me. And I didn't want what was in me. It was not of God to take it. So at that time, a woman began to wipe my body. And every wipe, I could feel hands breaking off. And I could feel the heaviness begin to lighten up on me. And at that time, I didn't realize that I was dealing with so many spirits, so many soul ties. I had no idea. And I knew I wanted to be free. So after she was done praying for me, and I could feel all of the hands lift, there was a pain in my stomach that I had never felt before. It was excruciating. But then, in that exact moment when I could feel it all leaving, I seen my mother's face and I seen my grandmother's face leave with it. And at that time, I felt like I lost too many pounds, physically and spiritually. So I went home and I looked at myself in the mirror, and it was unrecognizable. I didn't know the person that was now standing there. It's been a while since I had looked in the mirror. It just looked so clean, so new. And even after, it was still pressing into God. But the hardest thing was to get that man's eyes out of my head. Just, I began to live in isolation, withdrawing from everybody. Because I feared him. I felt that he still had a hold of my back of my neck and was leading me no matter how far or how close I get to God. And I was just asking God, if I could just see in your eyes, I know I could be free. That I could forget this man's eyes. That the torment would be over. He would never be walking into my home again. And I was telling my husband on the way to church, I can't get this man's eyes out of my head. I'm being tortured. And I walked into church, and a young girl had painted God's eyes, not knowing why. But God gave her that vision months ago, and God ordained the day that she needed to paint it, and she brought it to church. And as I walked through those doors without her even knowing, it was an answered prayer. Because I could see God's eyes. And I could feel the grip of his hand lighten. It's still there, as if it was laying there on me. But from that day, I haven't seen his eyes. And I was dealing with it still with drugs. I used to use marijuana as a coping mechanism. Praise God today that I'm sober from all things and that I'm clear-minded. And it took me a while of going back and forth from the church that I call home now to my old one. But God used it to show me, do not become calcified. Be willing to continue to press in without looking back. And then God began to tell me, it's time. And I didn't know what it's time meant. And I just kept hearing God tell me, it's time. It's time. And I kept asking God, what is it time for? It's time to become clean. And then God began to talk to me about being baptized again. I didn't even know you could be baptized again. But I knew I needed to be washed clean of the sins and the sexual perversions that were once on me. And I did. I chose to get baptized. And when I went up to get baptized, I went under and I could feel so much shedding up off me. And when I came up, God was speaking to me so heavily about releasing and breaking the barrier of allowing that man to lead me, even when God is leading me. So God told me to redunk my head in the water and become of sound mind. So I did. Here I probably look like I fell, but now I stand here willing to share my testimony and the goodness of God, because I wake up every day free and happy. I may be crying now, but it's hard. But there was a time that I'd never be able to speak of my life and the things that have happened because I thought I was alone. I thought it was wrong to bring these things out and to talk about them. And it's not. Because it holds those accountable. And it makes me free. Free in the eyes of the Lord. And I am washed whiter than snow, no matter things I went through. Because I know without God, I probably wouldn't be here. My kids probably wouldn't know my name. My husband probably wouldn't be my husband. Can't even promise I'd be alive. And that is a testimony I had. Because without God, I would have never made it. I would have never survived. Because I knew God was with me through all of it. I don't understand. I didn't understand at the time why he would allow such things. How is it okay? I'd question him. I'd even scream at him. Then I realized, for such a time as this, because I'm here to share my testimony with blind faith that it'll reach the multitude of people that need to hear it. You know that you don't stand alone and that God is with you and God will meet you right where you are. You just have to be willing to accept him into your life. And he will lead you. He will guide you. He will nurture you. And he will give you the love and the strength that you need to survive. And that is just the goodness of God. And I'm so thankful because you know what? I sit in church and I see my 1-year-old and my 4-year-old worshiping God, singing to the Lord. My 4-year-old comes home and says he prays for his teacher today. He prayed for a little boy that fell in the name of Jesus. And I'm willing to stand in the gap for those that needed to hear this. Because you're loved.